Hey, welcome to Coffee Connect, everyone. I'm Roddy. I'm the host here. We're here to help you get connected to as many resources as possible. We got some great folks in the room that have come back after a little bit of a hiatus. We haven't seen Carl in a while, which is awesome to see him. And so, if you enjoy the conversations today and this is your first time here, do me a favor. Email me at ccinfo@addicted to connecting.com. I'll get you invited or put on the invite list so that you can receive the invites on a weekly basis. You can also go back to www.addictedtoconnecting.com and link to the weekly meetings, but also you can check out the past meetings on the playbacks. And I want to encourage everybody to do that. Listen, it was only a few months ago that I met this guy, right? And got connected with JJ. Obviously, veteran to veteran, we're always going to have great conversations and stuff. And he has been a part of our Coffee Connect family now probably ever since we met. And I had to breach to him. I said, hey, listen, I love to have you come on and chat and share some wisdom with us in whatever topic you wish to discuss. And we agreed that this was the time, this was the place. And today's topic is improving workplace communications. And so without any further ado, guys, I'm going to turn it over to JJ Hardy.
Hello, everybody. I feel honored to be able to come on here and share some of what I've learned throughout the years with y'all. Communication is one of those important topics that doesn't always get addressed, but should. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and just get straight to presenting.
While he's getting ready to share, Randy, good to see you too, brother.
Can everybody give me a thumbs up if they can see my presentation? Excellent. Okay. So again, it's effective communication, but it's effective workplace communication. So what the things that I'll discuss during this presentation is, I'm going to do a little intro. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership because, well, that's the basis of why it's important to communicate. We're going to talk about understanding workplace communications, strategy for effective communication, make it a system, and then I'll tell you guys a little bit about what I do over here at Victory Leadership Coaching. Okay, so that's a busy slide, right? But basically, this is all the crap that I am involved with and was involved with. I currently, I'm a family man. That's an old picture, but it's me in uniform. That's my wife and 2 kids. They're now teenagers. One of them's about to probably move out of the house on me next year. I also have a couple of podcasts, Warrior Leadership, and I also have a podcast called Victory Leaders Lounge, where I take entrepreneurs and leaders of whatever industry they're a part of, and I bring them on there as a guest, and they just share what they want to share with my audience, because it's important for other people to see that anybody can be successful. I consider myself a servant leader. I also published a pocket guide. It's a small book, and actually it's probably can't see it, but if you look in my little picture, it's right here. It's called Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders, and it's a pocket guide. It just does a really good job at explaining why development is important to an organization. Okay, so I'm retired from the Army, and so the one thing that I always do is I bring up my definition of leadership. So I believe that leadership is providing purpose, direction, and motivation while operating to accomplish a mission and improve the organization. That comes straight out of the publication ADP 6-22, U.S. Army. And I think this is a good definition because the civilian definition in the dictionary just talks about creating influence. Well, this talks about how to create influence, and purpose is helping people understand their why, and this is specifically in the workplace. Direction is helping them understand what they want to do, and motivation is kind of letting them feel like they're cared for and showing them support all along the way. And this quote goes along with that. So I'll read this word for word. But a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. And that came straight from the mouth of Douglas MacArthur. And I thought that quote was good because today we're talking about effective communication. And, I think part of effectively communicating, and I'll go more into it, is, keeping your ears open and your mouth shut and listening to others. So understanding workplace communication. If you see that little picture, it's kind of the opposite of what you would think about when you're effectively communicating. And the reason I did that is because when people don't communicate with their employees, that what tends to happen is they feel like they're kind of on an island of isolation at work. They don't understand where they stand, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and they don't feel valued. And so it kind of puts that frown on their face on an island with the sharks circling, and they just kind of are hanging out every day, going through the motions, which sucks because we spend 90% of our time at work. And if that's the case and we're spending 90% of our time at work, we should feel valued, and it should be a safe place for all of us if we go there. And here are just a few things, common communication challenges. There are often misunderstandings and, misconceptions. A lot of people feel like they don't have a lack of feedback, and I can share statistics on all these things if anybody is interested in having a follow-on conversation. Most of it's actually from the American Psychological Association site, because that's the most important place if you want to know what the statistics are for how people feel in whatever environment they're a part of. Lack of trust. Trust is the biggest thing in leadership. You can't create influence without trust. Remote communication challenges, which, I mean, gosh, right here, right? It's sometimes it's difficult and I'm not calling people out that are doing this right now, but if you're trying to brief a presentation or have a meeting with a group of people and somebody has their camera off, there are some challenges there. Not knowing where they stand, that's just, are they doing a good job? People just want to know. And then there are a lot of other things too. Those are just some of the key ones that I wanted to bring up. People that feel heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to do their best work. Now, why did I put this stat up there? Well, because people are always trying to drive productivity. But a business is nothing more than a group of people who are coming together to do a job. So if you're trying to drive productivity, you should probably work on your people skills and make sure people feel like they're valued. And, being heard is just part of that. You know what? I screwed that up, guys. I apologize. I'm going to mute my phone. Okay. Now, so we're gonna go to breakout real quick for just a couple of minutes, but there's a reason for that, because I've only given you a little bit of context. We're gonna go straight into the meat and potatoes here in a second. But I would like and feel free when you come back to share a little bit about it. But I'd like you to share with each other what some effective communication strategies are that you have learned or used while in your experiences in the workplace.
Apologies to Jeff D and Dave that I shuffled you guys around. Something happened, that people exited the room, so I left you guys. Didn't want to leave you guys there by yourselves.
It's all
I know
right. We
how
were
you guys
talking
are.
baseball. We were teasing the Cubs.
So, back to you, JJ.
Okay, so I'm just curious, does anybody want to share anything that came out of their discussion on this?
I personally.
So, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, just real quick, Ray. I've had my best luck with face-to-face communication, in person or even through Zoom, as opposed to emailing, chatting, etc. It just, I don't know. I think it's most effective to. Nothing can really be misconstrued when you're making eye contact. Thank you, Ray. Go right ahead.
Thanks,
No,
Jeff.
we came to that conclusion as well. But I always like to add that even though I'll have a face-to-face, I still follow up via some kind of communication for accountability purposes to document everything that was talked about. And so there's some kind of follow-up, and things just don't get lost because there's always a lot going on.
Or as humans, we tend to make error and forget half of the things that we talked about anyway. That's another one of those things.
I don't I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think Tim had an interesting story.
Okay.
The one at the end?
Yes.
So I took a technical writing class years ago, and we showed up the first day of class and walked into this room. It was almost like a conference room, big long table, and you know, a whiteboard or whatnot. And there's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of us walked in a little bit early, sitting there just not talking. And a gentleman walked in. He was blind and he was using his cane and found a seat, and we're all sitting there, and I don't know, it was a 10 o'clock class, whatever it was. We're all kind of wondering, like, well, where's the professor? And then at 10 o'clock, you know, top of the hour, class starts, and the gentleman who's blind says, "Okay, let's get started." He was the professor, and kind of blew us away. It was kind of interesting. He's teaching technical writing, but one of the things that has always stuck with me that he harped on was you have to know your audience. And that way you can then make your technical writing, you know, effective if you know your audience and the message you're trying to deliver. And I think that applies to leading meetings or leadership, whether it's written or oral. You have to know your audience so that you can get your message to them.
I agree with that. Thank you for sharing that, Tim.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to share anything? That I think that was probably most of the breakout rooms. Okay. I can get back into it. Thank you all for the ones who spoke up. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So we're going to go over the basics, right? Before we go into, you know, the strategy. And so first we're going to start with active listening. There was a guy, his name is Stephen Covey. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Leaders. Can't remember which one it is, but anyway, his name is Stephen Covey. He said, seek to understand and then to be understood. And I added the comment, respond to what is said, not with an unrelated thought. And that may seem like a silly way to say it, but how many times have you been having a conversation with somebody and, you know, either they interrupt you in the middle of what you're saying and they kind of blurt something out, or you might be talking about how much trouble you were having at work, or, you know, I had this issue today, or I was getting along great with this person. And then at the end of it, they respond to what they were thinking, which was completely unrelated. It could have been, oh my gosh, I'm running late for lunch. It's almost like they weren't listening at all to the entire conversation. So active listening is nothing more than the idea that you are keeping your mouth shut, your ears open, and you're not just hearing what people are saying, you're actually listening. And what that means is that you're dialing down on what they're saying. And though you may have a thought in your mind that you want to put out there and say to them, whether it's prompted during that conversation or what have you, you're putting that aside. And when they get done talking and it's time for you to respond, you respond to what they said, not with the thought that you had when it came up, or the thing that you were thinking before they started saying something out loud. And that's important, because when people are heard, they feel like they're valued and they feel acknowledged, and they feel like somebody actually cares about them in a way. And really that's all we want in life, is for other people to care about us and feel valued. So active listening is a very important part of communicating, because even though it's simple to respond to what they're saying, I'm going to go ahead and jump out on a limb here and say not a lot of people do it. Now, clear and concise communication. I like what Tim said, and I didn't put this up here, but I do think that understanding who you're talking to is probably one of the biggest things when you're being clear about your message. Making sure that the information that you're putting out resonates with the audience that you're talking to. That is very important. But when it comes to being clear and concise, it's also not being super lengthy. I would say this is even more important now than it was when we were younger, because people have this funky little device right here that they're staring at, flipping through reels, and people's attention span, it's not very big. They don't have a big attention span. So keeping your message short, and then, being concise is keeping it to the point, short and to the point. That's basically all it is. And I put be direct and specific, but that's basically the same thing. And the reason you do it that way, and this doesn't matter if it's writing an email, unless of course there's an entire timeline or something that you promised somebody that you were going to share with a group, but it can be email, a phone conversation, if you're teaching somebody something, or if you're just having a regular conversation, it doesn't matter. It all applies. Making sure you're short and to the point, because the last thing you want to do is ramble on and on and on, and then people are trying to figure out when you're done talking what the heck you said to begin with. Now, nonverbal communication, and we touched about this in my breakout group for just a second. This is the importance of face-to-face communication, whether it's on Zoom, if that's the only option you have, or if it's in person. It's sometimes what you say matters. I mean, that's absolutely true, because that's the message you're trying to convey, but also the body language that you put out. If I'm sitting here teaching you with my arms crossed and I'm leaning back in my chair, that's a very defensive posture. People in the audience are probably going to think, this guy is really full of himself, or he's just way too relaxed. He doesn't care about what he's teaching us at all. Facial expressions matter. If you have a sad look on your face, or if you feel like, or if your eyes start moving around and you just look like you're not engaged, or if you start breaking eye contact, which is also the last one, and you start looking around the room, or whatever the case may be, do people really feel like you're into that conversation? Which also translates back to that active listening. Do they feel valued? I don't know. Simon Sinek just put out a video recently where he talked about the cell phone, right? Where when you have a cell phone in your hand and you're having a conversation with somebody, it doesn't matter if you're using it and it's up to your ear, or if you're looking down at it and you're texting. The person that you're talking to, do they feel like they're the most important thing on your mind right now during that conversation? Or the fact that this is in your hand, does that feel like that is the most important thing that you're dealing with? Because it absolutely just has to be in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gosh, it's just, you got to make sure that when you're having a conversation with somebody, and these are the basics of communication, people. I'm sure we've all heard this stuff before, but it's important to reiterate these things, because if you're not into that conversation, then you're absent from the conversation. And even if you're into it, it doesn't matter if you are into it. It matters what that other person feels, because their response is going to be directly related to the message that you're conveying to them. And part of that is through the nonverbal communication. Now, this is an important part, and we should take a couple extra minutes. And I know in my group, we talked a lot about the implementing communication improvements. And this is the systematic part of communicating with your entire team and communicating consistently and often. But we are going to take I think this one should be just a little bit longer, Rodney. Not only will they get some networking time, but
Okay.
they'll also get, this could go into a pretty long conversation, I feel. And we can talk about, so forgetting what we talked about before, and some of you already did discuss it, what are some ways that you have improved the overall communication model between you and your employees at work? So I talked about the specifics of the way you communicate. Well, I know that one person mentioned in my breakout group that they just don't like having meetings unless they have to. That's not what I'm referring to. If meetings are part of your regular communication, that's fine. But I want to know how you have improved communication. And this is the relationship building part of communication. So if you wouldn't mind, Rodney, put them into breakout groups, and I'm really interested in hearing some of the things that have worked and have not worked.
Awesome. I will see you guys back here in 9 or 10 minutes.
We have everybody, Rodney?
I think we do. We lost Scott somewhere along the way, I think.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, he's here. He's here.
Oh, there he is. He's up in the upper left on my screen.
I hit the wrong button, Rodney.
He went back to the main room. There we go. Yeah, I think we got everybody. It's all you, brother.
So, all right. As far as building relationships and improving the overall communication at work, what are some of the strategies that you guys came up with in your breakout groups?
I think one of the common themes that we had, right, was stop knowing what your people do and start knowing your people.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the ways to do that, just to build off what Rodney said, I know when I stood up a new team in my just prior role, actually invested in half day of training where we did the Clifton Strengths Finder along with the Myers-Briggs profile, and it helped me cut to some pretty quick points of, okay, if I got to coach Dave or Mary or anybody here, and I still don't know you yet real well, I could look at that, and it was sort of my cheat sheet of, okay, here's how I need to potentially approach this situation and be, received warmly. Not that it was, the end all be all, but it certainly helped all of us. And honestly, as a team trying to come together, I think we did come together quicker because of that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Anybody else?
I think we talked about
sorry.
Okay, we just talked about being approachable. If you're approachable, the people around you they feel comfortable sharing ideas with you. They feel comfortable. Even if there's a problem, they feel comfortable. I can go to him and I know that it's not going to be this toxic person I'm dealing with off the top, or someone who's already making that's already made that's already determined that how they're going to deal with it. Approachability is big.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's part of being the environment being a safe place. Yes.
Yeah, I heard a story this past weekend. This guy was sharing with me that he was going to work and he enjoyed his job and he was good at what he did, but as soon as he hit the parking lot, right, his mind was already on, what do I got to get done today, right? And so he was walking in this very serious mode, and there wasn't a lot of hello, how do you do's at the front desk or anything like that, right? And so after a few years, his boss came to him. He says, dude, you're really unapproachable. But it's not that he was unapproachable. It was just he appeared that way because when he came to work, he was just focused on, these are the things that I got to get done and I got to do, right? And so there are probably a lot of us that go through that mindset that our minds gets to spinning and we're like, these are the things we got to get done today, and we're so busy and everything else that we fail to recognize how that body language might be speaking to other people, right? And what it's saying.
What's interesting, Rodney, is that's part of the reason why I started adding this class to the workshops that I teach, is because when I was a young guy, I was so newly promoted E5, probably 6 months in, and everyone told me that I just had a standing jerk face. And so nobody really ever wanted to talk to me about things. They just thought I was mean. And so I wanted to learn more about that. And, this whole process of effectively communicating starts with that. You need to be approachable. I 100% agree with what John said, and making sure that we're going to go over it in a second, but communicating consistently and often and showing people that you care about them and all that stuff. Gosh, it's just so important. You really have to do a lot of stuff to make sure you make it a safe environment for them, because if they're not willing to come to their leader, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else want to share?
So I can share something. So somebody was talking in our breakout session about when meetings go on and on and on, like having some kind of time limit or some kind of agenda can help sometimes. and or like beforehand, if we can gather the information and send it to the person that this is what I want to talk about today in the meeting. So things like that.
Yeah. That's just a small way of letting people know that you respect their time. That also came up in our group. And thank you, Joe, for bringing that up and sharing that you always build that agenda to let people know what to expect. Well, does anybody else want to share? If not, I can put the presentation back on and we can finish this off.
JJ, I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, I work a lot in technology, and the individuals that I deal with on a regular basis, they appreciate short, concise, to the point kind of messaging and meetings, agendas, things like that. So that's what I'm used to doing. But as a female, I've also been accused of being direct and not very pleasant. And so I'm wondering if anyone in the group has experienced that as well, and how do you address it without being flowery language and verbose?
And I will tell you, as an IT person, I would have appreciated that. I don't like a lot of BS in meetings, but but there are people who they want to talk about their kids' soccer games, or the party they went to over the weekend, or the concert they saw. Again, it's knowing your audience.
And if you have a hard time adjusting to your audience, Deb, I think another thing that might work is just, at the beginning and at the end, letting them know you appreciate that they're giving you their time, and, just making sure you at some point during your presentation that you request feedback. Instead of them being worried about how direct you are, they might be more likely to just communicate with you on what you're saying.
Okay, great.
And I was going to add that I think one-on-one, it's easier to adapt. Like Joe said, he would have appreciated that. He doesn't like the verbose, where others, and knowing their personalities, knowing what motivates them, whether they like to hear about the party or not. I think the most difficult thing is when you are trying to cater to an entire audience that has many, many personalities, you have to find that balance and touch a little bit on each of what makes everybody motivated to want to listen. I think those are the more challenging things. Mm-hmm. So I think, Deb, like the one-on-one, try to not be direct always. Again, depending on who you're speaking with. If you're speaking to Joe, always be direct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I actually am kind of the opposite a little bit. I think early in my leadership, I was kind of, because I do like to share. I like to try to make sure that I make everybody comfortable and watch my body language, smile at everybody. I kind of was thought to be this pushover. So I know I ended up getting feedback from one manager and upper management that only knew what he knew from me visually, that he thought that I wouldn't be good in a management role because I would let everybody run over me. So everybody that knew me knew that wasn't the case, because I would definitely take the time to coach them and work with them and everything to make them successful. But it's funny how it can be opposite to Deb, where you feel like people are thinking you're unapproachable. They were thinking that I was a pushover.
Another thing too, I find is that if you're going to give a presentation or anything, in advance, is to know everything about what you're going to talk about. If you whether you have to study all night, 30 minutes or 1 hour, know exactly, you'll be well informed. And that keeps you from stuttering. It keeps you from drifting off and being rambling. Take that time out to say, okay, let me prepare for this. Let me know what I'm going to say. Let me know my audience. Let me know the person. And therefore, it makes it really easy. You don't feel as nervous, and you're not as, because you have some confidence right there. Confidence to start with anyway. That's just fine. That's one thing.
Well, thank you all for
One thing,
sharing.
I think Jeff talked about this, that communication can be like a self regulation also. Sometimes it can be your own emotions.
It can.
Hmm.
Yeah. Emotional intelligence is a big part of almost every facet of leadership. Let's see here. I I know that it's about to be over with here, but if you would be willing to stick around, it should only take me a few minutes to go through the rest of the information, and then I'll share my last slide with y'all. But I appreciate everyone's feedback. That was obviously an excellent breakout session. So I appreciate all the great conversation about that. If you wouldn't mind, just give me a couple moments. But if you have to pop off, I really appreciate you being part of the conversation so far. So I'll go over the strategies that I came up with as a result of this, and what I've taught in the past to my soldiers and other fellow work members out in the civilian workforce as well. So I believe that communicating consistently and often is extremely important. And this is basically just getting up from your desk if you're in a physical workplace and making the rounds and talking to a certain percentage of your team every day. Don't start with what can I help you with, or what's the status of this. Build a relationship when you're communicating with them. Start with, how are things going with you? What are your plans this weekend? Build relationships on a constant basis. People will probably be a little bit annoyed, like, what's this supervisor or manager wanting to talk to me all the time for? But over a certain amount of time, they're going to get used to it, and they're going to be like, well, that's JJ making his rounds again. And that'll build relationships eventually. That'll break the stigma of that not wanting to talk to your supervisor. People have a long history in a lot of different industries of not being able to trust their first time manager, so they don't want to talk to them in the first place. So that'll break that stigma. And as I said, you could start with the small talk, and this works in a remote setting too, but you have to be a lot more intentional about it. Setting a specified timeout to either pick up the phone and call them, or just setting a meeting up. Encourage open and dialogue. This is part of setting expectations. Always encourage feedback. Be vulnerable with them, and they'll be vulnerable with you. This means that when it comes time to let them know that something's going wrong with you, you can admit that you're making mistakes. If they know that you're allowed to make mistakes and you expect it of yourself, then they're not going to be so, they're not going to keep it to themselves. They're going to be more likely to want to talk to you about the things that are going wrong in their role as well, so that you can help them improve. And then just let them know every time you talk to them that you're there for them, just to give them support and actually mean it. And that means when you say that you'll follow up with them on something, you actually do follow up with them. I've had plenty of jobs in my past where I've talked to my manager and he said, oh, you know what, let me get you an answer on that. And then I never hear back about it. That will destroy your trust in half a heartbeat. And make it intentional. I think that setting up, some call it counseling, some call them for performance reviews, but it's just either once a month or once a quarter usually works best. Let people know where they stand. Tell them what they're doing good, bad, right, and wrong, and ask them what you can be doing better to support them as a leader. But always start off with the positive in a conversation like that, and turn it into a planning session for improvement, and actually follow up with what you guys discuss. And I do own a company, Victory Leadership Coaching, that goes over the formal part of the presentation. So I have a first-time leaders course that trains new managers on what they need to know to be successful. It's the training that they don't typically get when they get promoted for doing great work as a frontline employee. I have an executive leadership program that I'm letting out on the 1st of September. I do workshops, coaching, and I do speaking. And this is the QR code that I promised everybody. You can connect with me with all of my platforms. You can book a call with me, and my phone number is down there and my email. You can reach out to me that way. And I tried to go over that in the least amount of time possible because I wanted to make sure I was being respectful of everyone's time that decided to show up for today's call. And I really appreciate everybody's participation.
Does anybody have any questions for JJ?
Oh, Rodney, your voice is almost gone, man.
My voice is almost gone.
Oh, there it
we
is.
go.
You were
I'm here.
underwater for a moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for JJ?